Уважаемые коллеги, добрый день. Начинаем пресс-конференцию президента России Дмитрия Медведева. Пожалуйста, ваши вопросы. Russia Today, пожалуйста.
Russia Today, please. Dmitry Anatolyevich, many scholars and leaders of NATO countries have called this summit a historic one and a turning point in the relations between Russia and NATO. Do you agree with such an assessment? And does it mean that it has been possible to express the viewpoint of Russia correctly? Was it assessed positively? How was it received anyway? Well, today my colleagues found many words to express their view, which is not bad. I also use the term historic today, implying we have traveled a long distance, starting from some illusions which perhaps existed in the 90s towards the productive interaction in the beginning of this decade. Subsequently, there were serious disagreements, different viewpoints expressed. Now we are bolstering our cooperation. Therefore, basically, I would agree that this is a very important stage of building on meaningful, full-fledged partnership relations between Russia and NATO. Incidentally, even in the declaration endorsed regarding the outcomes and the statement of the Secretary General, it spells out our desire to develop strategic partnership, which is not an incidental remark. It means we have overcome the difficulties of the recent past. Now, as regards specific outcomes, they're all reflected in the documents. Still, I will mention a few of those. First, we have stated the fact that indeed the period of cooling relations and claims is over. Now we are optimistically looking forward, and we are trying to develop relations between Russia and NATO in all directions. There are key directions, though, which are important to us and which are important for the North Atlantic Treaty Organizations of the countries making part of these organizations. That's interaction in various fields, like countering terrorism as one of the serious, very complex challenges faced by the entire world. We have endorsed the whole list of threats before our countries: narco crimes, drugs crimes, and problems related to piracy, the spread of the weapons of mass destruction. These are all topics where virtually we don't have differences. I will recall the fact that even in the most difficult times, when after the year 2008, after the Caucasian crisis, the relations between our countries have been quite acute. Still, the interaction on the counter-terrorist track remained. This was my conscientious stance at the time. Then it was not easy to listen to each other. Still, we continued to cooperate in that area. And it's even more natural to do it today. With all challenges, we'll cooperate productively. We have achieved a lot there. One more important and widely discussed topic, that's the MD subject. Here, it's quite evident that everything seems to be new, and the Europeans themselves and the NATO states don't have a complete understanding of what's going to happen there, what it will be looking like, how much it's going to cost. But everybody is clear that, generally speaking, this MD system will only be useful when it's universal, when it's not just one component helping some countries or covering just different regions. And there was an interesting discussion. I will probably talk about it later. And we have agreed that we'll continue this interaction further on. We discussed cooperation concerning Afghanistan, too. This perhaps is another topic which is extremely important to us, the Russian Federation. Not less important, of course, for NATO, for the states which are rendering assistance in ensuring security in NATO countries and other countries supporting this mission. Here again, everything is quite all right. Even in the difficult times, we didn't suspend this cooperation. We allowed this non-lethal transit, and we have allowed the military transit too. And today we continue this discussion. We talked about various possibilities with regards to transit, including return of some cargoes through the territory of the Russian Federation. While talking about traditional topics of Russia-NATO relations, everything looks quite okay there, which doesn't mean, though, that we don't have some differences. There are some. Well, one of the most serious differences being our assessment of the events of year 2008, of what happened there in the August of 2008, and attitude towards well-known geopolitical changes which occurred then, and emergence of two states, for example, Southern Ossetia and Abkhazia. We stated the fact that this subject should not be turned into a stumbling block. We will continue to discuss this topic. We want to see to it that these discussions be fruitful. It's only like that we can ensure peace in the Caucasus and in the whole of Europe. And we are prepared to continue these discussions, even if we have our own stance and NATO countries would pursue their stance. There are other issues where we differ. To be honest with you, there are not too many. And second, we have agreed that such issues should not tear apart our relations. On the contrary, we should see to it to find a way out from these difficult situations, to be able to listen to arguments of each side. Taken together, I might as well say that the summit which has been held here, the NATO Russia summit, are a very important step in reinforcement of our relationship. And this is indeed a historic event, since any types of new ideas and new agreements are always part and parcel of the world history. Dmitry Anatolyevich, you've just mentioned MD, and you just said that this discussion will continue. It's well known, which you've mentioned on various occasions, that theoretically Russia is prepared. Will there be such a chance for Russia to participate in this system, but only on equal footing? And your statement on this forum was very much expected. What did you tell them? And what's the Russian proposal today, and what was their reaction of your colleagues? Oh, indeed, it's a very important question. It was the centerpiece of my statement, and I dedicated it to this MD subject. It so happened that over the past 10 years, the world has been developed on the basis of the nuclear deterrent. I will not right now discuss whether it's good or bad. There will be always different assessments. Nobody likes nuclear weapons, for one. On the other hand, it helped to preserve peace in Europe for decades. But emergence of the ABM systems can change the balance. And this evidently doesn't serve the interests of Europe or the world as a whole. And we've been very cautious with regards to this ABM system. And once the previous U.S. administration proposed to set up the third defense region, you remember the Russian Federation response. It was very tough. Why? Whatever they told us at the time, we believed, and we still believe, that this idea, first and foremost, was aimed against the Russian interests, and only to a lesser degree against the interests of the countries who are capable of uncontrolled proliferation of nuclear weapons or launches of missiles from their territories. And it's not very clear what kind of launches that might be. We have to pay tribute to the present administration of the U.S. They were courageous enough to forego this idea of the third defense region. The Russian Federation, in response, backed off the idea of deployment of well-known missiles and radars in the Kaliningrad region. I believe that diffused the tension and allowed us to talk about ABM not as an idea geared against the interests of one or several states, but rather of the idea of the umbrella protection against missiles launches. But I will recall the fact that nuclear potential still remain. Therefore, when we talk about ABM, we need to think about how the European MD will affect our nuclear potential. Our position is simple. If we do it together with regards to ABM, this ABM should not destroy the existing parity. For known reasons, if in the result of ABM, the nuclear balance would be shifted in any direction, that would stem in arms race again. That would result in arms race. Therefore, the ABM idea might be constructive and dangerous on the other hand. Now talking about European MD, as it was discussed today in NATO, I will be blunt with you. We need to sort it out to understand what it's all about. On top of that, the European countries should sort it out. What's their position? And at the end of the day, what will be this idea of European ABM looking like, especially after it will have been finalized by, let's say, year 2020? In turn, we need to find out what our position will be. And naturally, we should be guided by the fact that our participation ought to be absolutely equal. And I will stress it. It can only be partner-like, no other participation, just provided appearances were safe. No, that's no-go. It's either going to be a full-fledged change of information, being responsible for certain problems, or we don't take part at all. If we don't take part at all, then for known reasons, we'll have to protect ourselves. Otherwise, precisely that's why Russia has formulated a whole set of ideas how we can take part in the European ABM. These are indeed the principles of equality, in the first place, transparency, technological approach included, and responsibility for decision-making. We have put forward setting up the so-called sectoral MD. This is a subject to be separately analyzed. Today, I don't insist on providing a prompt answer to us on this one. I understand with regards to sharing responsibility in the European ABM, various arguments could be put forward, various stances could be taken by different countries. Nevertheless, if you want to implement this idea, then we can see the reason for us to take part in this whole concept. And then we get a sense of responsibility invested upon ourselves, and we'll be ready for full-fledged cooperative interaction with our partners. We have agreed, both with our partners in NATO, and I have separately discussed this subject matter with the leaders of several European countries, France, Germany, UK, President Obama, several times, to the effect that we'll further pursue dialogue on all issues related to European ABM. So the door is still open. The door is open for discussion, but the outcome of this discussion should be understandable and acceptable to us. Therefore, we shall necessarily pursue this discussion further.
President Medvedev, Ian Trainer from The Guardian. President Obama, of course, has been speaking of resetting relations between America and Russia, and this meeting today is being seen as also a reset in relations between NATO and Russia, and you have been saying that you're very optimistic about this. Could you tell us, please, what you think will happen to that reset if the American president is unable to get the New START treaty ratified in Washington? Thank you.
Это было бы обидно.
That would be very unpleasant because the work of many people aimed at general relaxation of tension on resetting relations both between Russia and the US and also between Russia and NATO, all of that would be in vain. In this case, I hope that legislators of the United States of America would demonstrate a responsible approach. On top of that, the START treaty is of interest both to the Russian Federation. Not to a lesser degree, it's of interest to the United States of America. Not to a lesser degree, it's of interest to all other countries. I will not hide it from you. I've just 40 minutes ago talked about it with President Obama. He told me that he intends to vigorously work on it with the Congress, and I hope that this work will be crowned with success. If we fail to move this question forward, for known reasons, the world will not become safer in the end. But at the end of the day, I'm sure that common sense will prevail and the relevant decisions will be adopted. We will act symmetrically to what will occur in the United States of America. And from day one, I have been telling President Obama that the Russian parliament will act in accordance with the decisions which will have been adopted by the US Congress, because this is our common interest, and we're interested in making this process of ratification symmetrical with regards to the START treaty.
It's Stephen Fiddler from the Wall Street Journal. Does the agreement today that you've signed with NATO mean that Russians now trust NATO? And the fact that you've signed onto a cooperation agreement on missile defense with NATO, does that signify that you share the concerns of some Western countries about the threat posed by Iran's missile and nuclear programs?
I have mentioned the fact that the Council and the NATO summit is a historic event because very important decisions were adopted there, first and foremost in the interest of NATO itself. NATO itself, that's endorsement of the strategic concept of NATO, is a very important component of the development of the North Atlantic Alliance. I will not hide it from you. We have quite attentively studied the approaches taken for this strategic concept. There were some elements which puzzled us a little bit, surprised us. Then there were also optimistic components to us. Ultimately, certainly this is an internal question to NATO, but we cannot be impartial there. And the final version of the concept, I believe, reflects the desire of the NATO states to build constructive relations with the Russian Federation, to move in direction of full-fledged partnership there, which is good. Therefore, we believe that regarding development of the relations with NATO, we have put this question forward, even if we have differences and differences ahead of us too. Now, while talking about assessment of challenges and threats existing today, we have a survey there which lists the threats which potentially are there, including the threats of unauthorized proliferation of mass destruction weapons. They are spreading the world, threats of the missile launches, and we have been prepared very attentively to work with NATO in this direction too, and we'll do so, including with regards to the nuclear programs of several countries. Not so long ago, I had a meeting with the president of Iran. We discussed bilateral Russia-Iran relations, which of late have not been very easy for known reasons. But I mentioned it once again while talking with my colleague, that Iran must exercise goodwill with understanding of the fact that Iran is a sovereign, independent state with a long history and desire to develop its own strength and economy, Iran, having a right for peaceful use of atom, should prove to everybody that Iran's programs of the development of atomic industry is peaceful, and that Iran is ready to cooperate with international structures, first and foremost with IAEA. Therefore, assessing various problems, naturally, will do so along the lines I've mentioned here. With the NATO countries, we'll most attentively take a look at the development of various programs existing in other countries. We're not impartial to who is developing and how the current nuclear potential looks in the world, who is an actor of the nuclear club and who seeks to be part of that club, who would like to legitimize themselves as being part of this club, saying that they're in ownership of the weapons of this nature, or those who hide that. And there are other tracks we'll pursue to cooperate in this area. Dmitry Anatolyevich, relations between NATO and Russia have never been very smooth, so to say, from confrontation to very cautious partnership sometimes. Today, judging by your statement, you want to make peace. What are the specific outcomes that you would like to achieve after this new round of friendship talks? Well, I wouldn't like to regard this as just a round of talks which would end in confrontation. That would be bad for Russia and NATO. For known reasons, we are so interlinked and closely connected that any change of positions of any side will immediately tell on the position of the other side. I've just mentioned the fact that, let's say, if we fail to agree on MD here, that ultimately in 10 years or earlier, that could be a new arms race coming our way. And we believe so, and we think that NATO believes so as well. Talking about the current status of affairs, they are not bad. We have moved forward. We are talking about partnership. Today, in the remarks of my colleagues, various assessments were expressed, but generally speaking, all of them said that it's necessary to develop partnership relationship, to develop alliance. People were even talking about this things like union. That's, of course, is emotional, not on paper, but that reflects the tenor of discussion. If there are differences and contradictions, what we expect from this? We expect normal, full-fledged relations with NATO countries. We expect that in the outcome of these relations, we'll have conditions whereby quiet development of our state will be possible, and we don't want to waste money on arms race. We've done that before, and the repercussions were not very good for the Soviet Union too, as you know. Therefore, we take interest in seeing to it that our defense strategy be predictable, bearing in mind how we build our relations with NATO as a major military political bloc. And if these relations are predictable, transparent, understandable to us, if we can understand where we cooperate and where we're jointly tackling the problems like this European ABM, it will be easier for us to build our economic strategy too. In what manner? Therefore, the relations between NATO and Russia, these relations have an effect on the quality of life of Russian citizens at the end of the day. Also on the quality of life of Europeans, for that matter. A lot has been said now while discussing the question of how much will it cost with regards to European ABM in Europe. Crisis still with us. Nobody has excessive money to spare, and we are talking big money here. But while we agree on that, while we do that, and NATO has decided to do it, we are thinking about what we should know, what will be the cost of it. Therefore, the good relations between NATO and Russian Federation has a direct bearing to the tempos of economic development of our countries. We should not be distracted by setting up excessive defensive programs. We should think about future. We should think about those people who are building new life today, about young generation, about educational programs, And we should think about helping least developed countries, Africa. All that can be done if we understand what will be the cost of the defensive programs. This is why I believe that development of our relations with NATO will affect the good climate in the world and the well-being of very many people living there.
Jean-Jacques Mével, Le Figaro. Une question sur l'Afghanistan, Monsieur le Président. Quels sont les intérêts concrets que la Russie défend en promettant son aide?
Now, as regards to the cooperation with Afghanistan and the plan to withdraw from Afghanistan with troops by year 2014, do you think it's a realistic plan?
Réaliste.
Я уже сказал, что мы активно
I've said
работаем.
already, we've been working actively with the NATO countries on Afghanistan. We have our own experience, dramatic experience of presence in that country, and we are not impartial to what Afghanistan will look like. We want it to be a free, modern, efficient, independent state where the historic traditions of Afghanistan will be respected, but which will be speaking the same language with the international community. I've just mentioned that while talking with President Hamid Karzai, I told him that we'll continue to help Afghanistan in all directions. We've been doing so in a serious way. We're doing it bilaterally and multilaterally, helping ISAF. What we discussed today, we certainly discussed the fact that we'll continue cooperation in transit, which is an important direction of interaction. Everybody appreciates that. We are also prepared to deal with civil and military transit on non-lethal equipment and hardware. We have agreed and made new agreements on the subsequent withdrawal of such hardware of Afghanistan to the territory of third countries, and we'll continue cooperation in countering drugs trafficking, which is a very important subject for the Russian Federation, because regrettably so, all heroin and opiates produced in Afghanistan, first and foremost, find its way to our territory, then via our territory to Europe. Therefore, believe we didn't pay enough attention to it earlier. We've started to pay more attention to it. We've been working it. We are involved in the joint operations with the NATO states. Basically, we are satisfied with the outcomes of these operations. We'd like to further coordinate our activities there, naturally, jointly with the Afghani government. And so far, so good. And we'll continue to help Afghanistan in protecting their national interests, including bilateral assistance. We are prepared to supply various equipment and weapons. If necessary, we'll be doing so. And we are prepared to work along the lines of economic interaction, and I hope that this track of cooperation will be especially bolstered during the upcoming visit of the President of Afghanistan to the Russian Federation next year. Therefore, virtually all around the movement has been good, and the good understanding with NATO countries has been achieved. We have achieved a lot, I believe, over the past years in this area. And last thing, regarding year 2011 and further on, well, it's difficult for me to assess if these plans are realistic. I believe that the current situation in Afghanistan, let me say, is far from being quiet, even if the work of the President of Afghanistan, the government, has been quite substantial. There is a polarity of Afghan society. It's quite high. The terrorist threat originating from Afghanistan is also high. Therefore, whether it's feasible in the forthcoming future, I don't know. I have some doubts there. But at the end of the day, these decisions will have to be made by those who have once decided to help Afghanistan. We'd like to see to it that in the wake of the presence of the corresponding troops, Afghanistan be in position to develop independently as an efficient state. We'll work in the direction ourselves too. Distinguished colleagues, I think it would be fair if the last question at the press conference be asked by mass media of Portugal.
António Esteves Martins, Rádio Televisão Portuguesa. Eu gostava de fazer a minha pergunta em português, suponho que tem...
So this meeting is a historic meeting that marks a new step in the relations that were not easy always between the Russian Federation and and NATO in the new framework and within the new strategic concept when we speak about partnerships and management of risks and threats. Can we think that one day the Russian Federation will be part of an Atlantic alliance, which is not the same as in the past, and as you said, is closer and closer to Western countries with a new spirit and a new understanding where some people talk and some people listen. Thank you very much.
Ну, я, во-первых, хотел бы поблагодарить
First of all, I'd like to thank the Portuguese presidency for excellent conditions. I have told about this. I told this to the Prime Minister of Portugal. The atmosphere and the situation is quite democratic. It's quite open and overt without any problems in communication. Everything that we wanted to tell each other, but used to be afraid to do so, has been said today, in which instills optimism as far as I can see it. And at the same time, everything has been rather constructive, quite constructive. As far as future is concerned, well, future is an indefinite thing. At present, I can see no circumstances in which Russia could join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but the North Atlantic Treaty Organization changes, and if NATO changes that crucially and dramatically, that there arises a question about our closer cooperation with this organization, I believe it will be a topic open for debate. If there is goodwill and desire of our partners, we are ready to discuss such issues. As of today, our relations have become much closer and much more transparent and predictable, which suggests a thought that the potential of our relations has not been exhausted, by no means. And I hope that the rapprochement in our approaches on all the issues will continue, and after this summit I'm more upbeat than I used to be before. Thank you very much, colleagues.